Okay, so Twitch was down, so we're getting like a little 15-minute late start here, but we're gonna try this and see if it comes online. And mute that guy. And while we're waiting to confirm our stream is up, we will poke around a little bit. So, what are we doing? We're going to revisit the adapter and interpreter patterns. So, and then two things. One, I got a new microphone. And it should be a much better experience for all of us. Two, I got a new keyboard, and it's this funky agronomic keyboard. So I'm going to be looking down constantly as I relearn how to type. So hopefully, the mic being over here in this direction, and the keyboard being over here in that direction, won't get too crazy. Okay, so let's look back. Let's go to GitHub. And at the end of last, quote-unquote semester, we touched very briefly on the adapter pattern and the interpreter pattern as ways to get our request from one place to another. To first interpret what the user is putting in, and then taking that, translating it into, or interpreting it into a game request, passing it off to the server, right? But we only really paid it a lip service because we didn't really have too many mechanics in place to really show the worth of the pattern, and now we do. And then the same thing with the adapter pattern, right? So if we read the adapter pattern, we'll start here, that we've got to convert the interface of a class into another interface the client expects. Adapters let classes work together that couldn't otherwise because of incompatible interfaces. So it's actually it's a great pattern. It's great for any time that you need to cover these distances with code. And I see Smudge says in chat, just tweeted you ignore it. I will never ignore it. I will read all of them and I will take them deeply to heart. But now, and big shout out to Smudge, who contributed some code to the repo, which I went ahead and merged that into the master. So if you pull, you're gonna get two hands. You'll see two hands a bit in there, but really appreciate that. And it's good stuff. It really is, and it's encouraged me to maybe churn the fire of the community more, and also do more coding offline if it give other people a chance to get their hands dirty. All right, so let's look at the adapter pattern. Let's look at the adapter pattern inside of our code real fast. And so on the server side, we've got this process strategy, right? Because our TCP server and client are these things that were written by some other teammate, right? And we might bring that into the stream some other time as its own project, but it's a black box to us. And the way that it's been extended is it says, hey, you can write your own strategy for this guy, and all you need to do is extend the process strategy, and then you can take in requests of whatever kind you like, and do as you like. So this is the adapter. So it's allowing us to use this transport mechanism to kind of ship around our code, and it's boxed up. So our objects are boxed inside of this request, and then we unbox them, right? To kind of get to them. Actually, wait, is that backwards? Anyhow, but we're casting this to a console request. And then on our client side, we've got two things. We've got a parse strategy, and we've got a render strategy. So the parse strategy, do I have that? Hang on. So instead of our easy TCP, right, so we're doing this kind of very light domain-centric organization so that things are always in the right folders when we look at them. And so if we go to render, parse, this is where we kind of see our interpreter. So the job of the interpreter is to take this user input and turn it into a statement that the adapter pattern can understand. So if we look back at the interpreter, it's given a language, define a representation for its grammar, along with an interpreter that uses representation to interpret sentences in the language. So we're not quite as linguistically aligned as this definition. So I think it's better for our case to say it's a statement, right, or an expression. Let's use that, right? It's an expression. So we want to interpret an expression into an object, right? So that's what we're doing with the interpreter. So our interpreter here is super simple, as a lot of the game is, and we interpret this command line, and then we box it up into a console request, and then we box that up into a TCP request, and then we ship it off, right? So let's get rid of that guy. So then when the server gets it, we call this the console process strategy, because the hive mind, this game engine, might be getting a request from who knows where. It could be getting it from a GUI, from a console, right? From just about anything, or the web is another good candidate. So it's got these different strategies, and it should know where to pass them, right? So it's like, hey, this is a console request, go give it to the console process strategy. So then we grab that, we cast that payload to a console request, and we pass it on. So those are our two patterns. So we're gonna kind of deep dive and evaluate those, because as we're getting a more mature application, we got some refactoring to do, right? So let's take a look. So we get our game response. We do funky things with it. Right here, so get game response, and we come down here to that. And once we've done just a little bit of prep work, we go ahead and send it off to the hive mind. And we're sending it off to the hive mind as a game request, and we're expecting a response back. So far this is fine, right? So far this is all hunky dory. So go over to the hive mind, if I can find it. And last week we did this chain of responsibility pattern. So what we wanted to be able to do was have that request pass through different hands. And each one of those hands, or handlers, would have the opportunity to act upon it and do something with it. And we've got this very manual succession tree that we've done. So nothing super smart yet, but so we just say, hey, no matter what comes in, the auth handler is going to pass the game request, or in this case, it'll be the response. So it's going to pass the response to the command handler. Then the command handler is going to pass it to the finalize handler. So this is where we kind of get in trouble, right? Because let's go into the command handler. So we see that we pass in a game response. And then down here, we're overriding that with whatever comes from this execute action. So, well, if we're doing that in all of our handlers, then we're overriding what happened before. So we need to refactor out this whole idea of game responses going this deep into the game. And Smudge had a great insight on this last time, which is what inside of the game we should be passing on a context. And so if you're doing kind of database work or doing anything really, you're always going to get this idea of a context. And a context is something that should, at its most basic, represent the life cycle, if nothing else, in just itself, right? So if I had a DB context or a database context in any framework, as I'm passing this context around, it's tracking changes if I have that set up, right? It knows about where it's been and what it's done. So we want to give that same kind of idea here to a request context or an action context. So as we're passing it around, as it goes over here and it gets damage applied in a message, then it goes over here and the player gets drunk. This is all happening in the same universe. And so when it finally gets back to the player, we want to be like, hey, here are all the things that happened as a result of what you asked me to do. And right now we can't do that. Right now all we can do is we're just overriding it, right? This is messy. So, and if we go into the base actor, and we go to something like execute action, so we're taking in a game request, we're creating a new game response, but then we're only returning small amounts of information, right? And even here there's a bug, because what we really want to be able to do is type in game response dot was successful. Oh my goodness. This new keyboard's going to be the death of me. I don't even know where the equals key is. Give me a second. Oh my goodness. Okay, there it is. That is not it. What? Alright, I might be getting a... That's incredible. I've got to turn on a numpad. Anyway, so I got this ergonomic keyboard, so my hands are all doing this number, but... it's not faceless. Hang on, let me show you this crazy thing. Oh, crazy. I can barely even type. Alright. For the sake of everyone involved, give me 2 seconds to plug in my old keyboard. Ugh, it's maddening. Alright, I'm back. First Twitch, and then my own personal life changes. What's next? Alright, so this is the keyboard I got. You see this craziness? Let's go to Office Depot. Yeah, look at this. Man. So I actually had to go to a Learn to Type website. Anywho, alright, enough of that. So, here we go. So it was successful, the message, the amount maybe. There's a few things here. So instead of a game request, instead of a game response, what we're really hoping to do is replace this with a context. Hang on, I'm going to take a second to catch up in chat because I've been running around. Yeah. Mystical Polka, glad to see you're back. Glad to see that you're using the builder pattern. Awesome. Even happier to hear that it's working. And Smudge started his own game engine. Also, great news. I got to check it out. Oh, and I gotta. There's talk, there's musings in the chat about me teaming up with somebody. That could pan out. I don't know him. Is it Wick? Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so we want to replace this with an action context, something that we can keep passing around and then keep stacking on these messages. So let's do a quick refactor, and this is all part of this adapter pattern, right? And so we've got these. If you can conceptualize this, we've got the TCP layer that has its own request and response. Then we have the game request and response, and then we have this lower level, the things that happen inside the hive mind. And to keep track of all that, we actually just want an action context. So let's figure out where to put that. So we've got our domain logic, and inside of our domain, we've got our game engine. And we don't need to put it in a common project, so we also have a common project that's going to be all the things we want to share amongst projects. But I think the core is going to be a good place for it, because only the core needs to know about it. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and add a new item. Seems like the pronunciation is Will Key. I think I have seen this stream. I think I liked it. It's interesting, and I really enjoy the Watch People Code movement, so I'll definitely send him a message and see what his thoughts are. If he has any advice or he wants to do something together, I think it'd be cool. Okay. Action context. Make that class. And this is going to be fun because it's another part of our game that we can kind of silo off and watch it grow in fun ways. So for any action, I want to have a list of things. Let's go ahead and add another item. I'm just going to call this action item, and we'll see how far that gets us. I'm not super happy with it right now. So, let's just go to a date time. So let's say created. Let's make that a public property. Get set. Let's go ahead and do a bool for was successful. Let's get set that. We've got public. We need a string for the message. Let's get and set that. And sometimes there's an amount. Okay. So let's get rid of these things we don't need. Come next, back into the action context. And super simple, we want a list of action items. And we want to have the iPlayer and we want to have the iGame object as the target. Okay. So, this is the idea. We're going to be replacing all of this funny business with the game response going so deeply into our hive mind with game actions with this guy. Alright, cool. So let's go ahead and, now we've got these two items that we can use, let's go back over into our hive mind and see exactly why and where we want to do that. So we replaced all the business logic used to be in the hive mind with this idea of handlers. And we used the chain of responsibility pattern last week to make that happen. And I'm pretty happy with it. Now if we go into our command handler, we're saying that we want to get the game response back. But I don't want to get the game response back. What I want to do is to pass around this context to all these different handlers, and then at the very end, if I go back into hive mind, at the very end I'm always using my finalize handler. Right? And so I want the finalize to make sure that we have everything that we need in order to return a good game response. So, for example, what I want to do here, well, let's back way up, because I think we're going to need to go all the way back to the command pattern. So, in our base game object, we've got our iGame object, we have our iCommand. So this is the interface that we defined for all commands in the game. So what happens if, oh, we do need to place that. We do need to put all that stuff in common if we want to use it. So take this and this. We were trying to figure out where the stuff should go. It turns out it all needs to go into the common so that everything knows what it is. Let's move that. Let's get rid of this guy. Do a little bit of cleanup. Jumping around a bit on you. Okay. Now let's go back over to our iGame command. So we want our actions to return back an action item. And we're going to pass in the action context. It's going to be the same thing for this guy. And we're going to pass in the context and the inventory item. So I hope this makes sense. And you're going to see this pattern a lot, especially if you're doing MVC and you're doing Entity Framework and such, where the context is what you want to pass around. And when you start talking about request and response, those things should be at the end. You should be dealing with the request up front and the response at the end. And then all throughout, you really want to be dealing with a context of some sort. It'll make everyone's life a lot easier. So we're refactoring that out now. So if I build, I've just made a change at the lowest level of my architecture. So by making this change, I'm going to get a ton of bugs. Oh my goodness, only 12. Well, that was anticlimactic. I don't know. Sorry, I'm looking at chat with my peripheries. And Mystical Puka says that he was in the military for 5 or 6 years. I was in the Army National Guard. I saw some things. Got deployed twice to Iraq. I saw some stuff. I used to get a lot of... I went through some interesting conversations with people who were like, "You're so peaceful, how could you join the military?" And my thought, from reading too much philosophy, was, if you want to change something, become it. And then just change yourself. So if I wanted there to be more morality and ethics, and I thought there was a problem with the way soldiers were behaving, all I had to do was become a soldier and behave better. So. Mystical Puka said he was also deployed twice. Man, small world. Okay, so I got these 12 errors. And they're presumably everywhere. Well, let's just fix them one at a time and then rebuild every time. So, one of the problems looks like it's in the interface. An iGame object. Oh. It's not. It's actually here. So I want this to return back action item. And I want to take in action context. And then for the action type, see, this is already fun, right? It's like you're making this great foundation. And I think that once you see it the right way, it's like, wow, yeah, why was there ever a request object this deep in enemy lines, like this deep in enemy territory, where you're like, I shouldn't know anything about the request here. I should only know enough to complete my step. So, we go to the action context. We got to go back to our context. We're going to player the target. Let's do a public game action. We'll call it current action. So this will be what we're currently working on. And so you can see how these contexts can get more complicated because you want to maintain the current state as well as kind of this history of what's been done. So they do grow and get pretty big and have kind of minds of their own. Okay. So the current action. I can really slim this up by removing that entirely and just pivoting on it here. Cool. So what I really want to do here is return a new action item, which has a message. And then, these are all false because you're trying to apply it actions like heal, negotiate, repair, and fight to items, which you can't do. Okay. So let's go ahead and do that for the rest. Alright, so this already feels better. It feels better because once you've seen this once or twice, it feels better internally because we're doing what should be done. We're passing in a context, we're getting back an item. And then we're going to leave it up to the hive mind to really make sure all these things go in the right places, which is what the hive mind is supposed to do. Okay. So for process item, I want to do the same thing as I did before. Or get back an action item. I take in both a action context and an inventory item. And so these guys can't actually, an item can't process an item. That'd be weird. So we don't need the request. One successful, false. Alright. So we can go ahead and just make this one line so it looks like everything else. Okay, what's next? 10 errors. Alright, base actor. Cool. Okay, this is going to be a big one because this is where we're doing a lot of our stuff. So, remember that we're going to pass back an action item. And then instead of taking in a request, we're going to be taking in the action context. Oops. Yes, context. And then we don't need this stuff, right? And I see this little red guy saying I can't override this, which means instead of iActor, yeah, that looks good. Base game object, maybe? Let's just make sure everything. Yes. Action item. So much as doing too much stuff. When are you doing some OC and SR principal episodes? That's a good point. Churning, thinking, churning. You are right, though. You're like my canary in a coal mine as far as keeping things on track and focused. Alright, 6. Getting closer. Oops. What? Give me 2 seconds. Okay. One more, and then we'll, and by one more I mean one big one. Good gracious. So, as far as the idea of, I do think it was a good point in chat about the make sure you're following those solid principles. And in earlier streams, part of the desire to get to a refactoring point was to be able to see the patterns emerge. Like in this guy, we've got things that look very, very similar, and then asking ourselves, once we actually have all our pieces and parts on the table, how do we then abstract them out or clean things up or refine things? I think it's good to see it happen, right? To see the problem emerge and then decide what tool to use to fix the problem. I joked about it before by saying that, design patterns got us into this mess, and a design pattern should be able to get us out. And I think that's true. So when we start looking at code that can be refactored, that's a great time for a conversation about, okay, so how do we do that? How do we actually fix this stuff? And previously I was doing a Refactor Saturday that was really geared towards that. But we're all evolving, learning. I hope with time get to a place. Maybe I'll hit up Wilkie and have like a coffee session where we can discuss. Actually, that sounds really exciting. To have kind of a forum. Could you imagine if like the Washable Code movement got to that place where we could say, hey, here's our super focused episodes, right? Here's what we're really diving into, and then some other day we'll kind of get together and we'll just kind of wax about best this and best that. Okay. So really close. Apparently chat really enjoys that suggestion. Now I have to reach out to Wilkie and a few other people. Alright, so so here I am going to be returning back a game action item. So I'm going to do var action item equals new action item. And then if I did my planning appropriately, I should be able to say some quick refactoring, right? Oh, I see. So I did have something in here that I wanted to keep. Cool. Sorry. Look, responding to chat, Smudge was saying that he showed some restraint in his pull request and didn't go crazy, so we had some meat to work with during our streams, and I appreciate that. All right, so I think at some point this is gonna hopefully become kind of this game is gonna become too big and too functional to be a good learning example, and then let's find a new example, right? And it's going to be another game where we start from scratch, where we say, okay, MudZ is off and running. Let's go ahead and start up a new game and start from the factory pattern and move on through. All the way back up to this point, we got another game. Just keep doing it over and over again. All right, so we can see from this refactor that we pretty much got everything we need here inside the action item. So there really wasn't any need to be passing around the game request or the game response this deeply. because we've got a player or a base action. We got items. We've got monsters. None of those things care about a game request or game response. Just even in a conceptual level, right? Take yourself to a role playing place, to just put yourself in the world. If you went to a monster and you said, "I hit you," or "I fight you," or "I swing my sword at orc," or whatever have you, in that moment, is there anything about the orc's response that involves, oh, well, what's the state of the game response? It doesn't need to know. It doesn't care. It's both functionally, it's conceptually, it's out of place. So we just want to say, hey, here's an action. Respond to it. Okay, so let's keep doing that. And this also frees us up to apply functionality and apply weight to the game response, perhaps more importantly, that belongs in the game response without having to carry that weight throughout the game. So this is all going pretty smoothly. I'm happy about that. Just going up and cleaning up all the references. Okay. Okay, so it looks like one of the only things we didn't have readily available to us was the sender. Oh, nope. We've got the player. Okay. So now we're back in the command handler. So we refactored everything up to our hive mind, and it feels and it looks better because if you were on a team again and you were talking about we're working on these tiers, all of the game response stuff, all of your really a lot of your client server stuff, all that interpreter stuff should happen away from, really far away from the hive mind. The hive mind should be this laser focused, super efficient game master, right? It shouldn't have anything injected into it that it doesn't need to know about. So, execute action wants the context. We don't have a context yet, right? So, let's do this. Instead of our hive mind, because our hive mind's a singleton, and we remember the singleton pattern and the benefits of that. One of the big benefits we have is when we know we have a proper use case for a singleton, we can really nearly abuse the benefits of this thing being available everywhere at all times. It really fits the motif of the hive mind being the god of our world, right? It's omnipresent and it knows all. So if you're in its domain, it knows about you and you know about it. Ooh, spooky. So, we got all these things in here. We want to clean this up at some point, but let's do a public action context. Action context. Get and set. Smudge says that he gave us, I'm going to use us from now on. This is our code. He gave us collectively a helper for the singleton, but I think it should be used very carefully. Yeah, I agree. The singleton, it's so easy to abuse and so easy to get yourself into trouble. And Smudge elaborates, people that go down the route of statics and singletons mess themselves up the second they require some instancing, concurrency, etc. Absolutely agree. And it's one of the reasons why I'm hoping to keep this game pretty concise as far as design patterns, so we never lose that scope. So when we say things, we're always talking about one of like 7 different things. We see that everywhere. So we're talking about the singleton. We're constantly thinking about the singleton. We're talking about the chain of responsibility. We constantly be looking at it and dealing with it. We never want to get to a point, at least I don't want to get to a point where our game is so big and so impressive that we spend weeks without ever talking about one of the patterns. All right, and then in our static constructor, let's say action context is equal to new. Oh, hang on. Dirt. I don't really care about it there. I can't do that in the static one. Yeah, it's good. We'll put that there for now. Okay. So, oops, sorry for the fast scrolling. Alright, so when we're in here, this guy, thinking. I think it's time for an experiment. And as we're coming to the close, I'm going to do an experiment, and then I hopefully will have the results of that experiment at a later date. If I make action context static, this will be for bonus points for everyone involved, which allows me to declare it in my static constructor. And then from within, my handle request, I say var action context is equal to hivemind.instance. Where'd you go? Where did you go? Hang on. Huh. Why didn't I have it? Mysteries abound, y'all. Give me a second. Oh. Nope, we're good. We're going back. It was going to be needless. Still the same experiment, just with less needless things. Alright, so if I do this, and I've got my action context, the question's going to be, and this is going to piggyback on Smudge's point, what am I actually passing? Right? Like, what's the reference? Oh, Smudge, you are probably right. Okay. Do 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 do. And we are running out of time. But we've got tomorrow. And all we're really doing is really coming in, we're asking ourselves a bunch of questions about the adapter pattern and the role and responsibility of the requests and responses that are coming in, and to some extent the interpreter. So in theory right here, since we have our action context, we can say action context dot action items dot add this guy. Is that too dense? It might be. So what we're doing here is that instead of returning back a game response, we are going to be adding these action items to our action context. And what this allows us to do is we could do a dozen things with a dozen messages and then return all that back as one bulk object to the client so they can render it. So we aren't limited to one game response anymore. Now, with one message and one whatever, now where we're going is we can return back a game response that has all the things that happened to that player or the player should know about as a result of their action. And hopefully we're also shedding some light into the adapter pattern. Oh. This is also like a great place to see refactoring. Like, because we see we're doing the same thing kind of over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got a few other things to change, but some other time. Alright, build succeeded. And that actually brings us to the close of, I want to say, about 45 minutes. Alright, so now that we've done all the plumbing and the refactoring, tomorrow is going to be where we actually go through and see if by refining these two patterns, or just the one really tonight, the adapter pattern, and pulling out game response and request to a higher level, probably some more stuff we need to do, but is that going to give us an easier time and a more successful time of passing around things using the chain of responsibility pattern? So we're really building off what we did last with the chain of responsibility, and now we are seeing where our architecture can be made more robust. We're refactoring our adapter pattern, and we're cleaning up some code. And then tomorrow we're gonna jump in, and hopefully we've had this bug in the game since the very beginning where we couldn't display two messages at once, and we finally fixed that. So now, if you beat something to death, you'll get back, that your last action, which is hitting them, as well as they fall to the floor limply and dead or whatever have you. So we're getting there. So all this builds, and if you're curious about the refactor, you can check it out. But keep in mind that, I'm looking at you, Smudge, keep in mind that we're going to come back tomorrow and really patch it all together. So while it all builds and it looks good, if you scratch the surface, you're going to see some more dirty laundry. Alright, so that's it for tonight. I want to thank everybody for hanging out. I especially want to thank everyone for dealing with the Twitch outage and kind of waiting at the door. Smudge asked, does it run? I knew you'd ask that, Smudge. So it probably will, actually. Let's go ahead and try that first. Let's go ahead and see how deeply broken we did it. Hang on. So our server's going to pop up, which makes sense. So we can log in. I probably wouldn't try to do much else than that, but it's a really good point. So I'll be thanking Smudge for these little pokes in the right direction from now until forever. But thank you. So this is where we really want to start refactoring, is that all this works, but we want to start when we start putting in actions, right? That's where all our work was. We want to make sure it's all being processed correctly. So, Let's go and stop this. I will commit, and I will say adapter and interpreter revisit and refactor. Let's go and sync that. And this all looks very pretty, again thanks to Smudge for getting in there and tidying all our stuff up. Smudge, you can do all that you like. Yeah, and it's a great point. These things don't have to end here, as Smudge has proven with GitHub. If you're here to learn about design patterns and such, GitHub and learning how to pull, how to make pull requests, how to merge things back in, and watching the code base evolve is going to be another really, really valuable thing. So yeah. Anything that you guys want to add, questions, whatever have you, to make that space denser, smudge, whatever you want to throw in there, it's going to make everything just that much more rewarding of an experience. So I'm going to start shutting down. I'll let chat kind of wind itself out, and I will see you guys tomorrow. But I'll do my classic wave goodbye once I'm all sorted out. Oh, smudge. Okay. Alright, I think that's it. I'll probably poke around this a little bit after hours, but otherwise I will see you guys tomorrow. And as